Fresh from the NATO summit, US President Joe Biden is expected to intensify his push to renew relations with Europe when he holds talks with the continent's leaders. The Biden administration is hoping to gain Europe's support for after 4 years of tense ties under the Trump administration. The president also wants the EU's backing over China. The 2-hour stopover at EU headquarters comes just before Mr. Biden's sit-down with Russia's Vladimir Putin. And for more on this, Lucy Hoff joins us from Brussels. Lucy, the US and EU trying to push past their disputes and focus on a China rising.
That's right, Steve. This is really about uniting in the face of what's perceived here to be a common enemy. And in doing so, this is about clearing away some of those disputes lingering from the Trump era, notably that escalation of a trade dispute, beginning with that 17-year dispute over airline subsidies, the Boeing and Airbus dispute, which we understand a deal has been reached on, clearing away some 11.5 billion in threats of tariffs after that trade war that, as I say, has been going on for nearly 2 decades now. A deal has been thrashed out here in Brussels by EU officials and US partners overnight, with a deal then presented to EU member states this morning that does now seem to have the approval and has been described as a breakthrough by EU and US officials. So that marks a major victory, and certainly one of the key areas that the EU and the US were intent on showing renewed cooperation. There does, however, still need to be an agreement on the steel and metal trade war that was escalated under President Trump. There also needs to be renewed cooperation when it comes to digital policy, and certainly that will be part of the discussions today. But really, this is about showing a renewed and re-strengthened transatlantic alliance in order that the focus can shift on Beijing. You noted there that the harder language that we saw in that communique issued after the NATO summit, that for the first time described Beijing as a security risk, an allegation that was, of course, described by Beijing as slander.
And what else do the Europeans want from the new US administration?
One notable area of cooperation that certainly there will be intensive discussions about today is the idea of a new digital partnership, that essentially the EU and the US would set the global standard when it comes to the regulation and standards when it comes to the digital sphere. And this is very much to counter the rising power of China in this domain. So that could be anything from the intricate digital supply chain, much of which runs through China, or collective investment in emerging digital technologies. So this is really about a more robust digital EU-US partnership, particularly in the wake of the taking on of big tech that we've seen for some years now here in Europe, but cases starting to be seen in the US, such as the case taken against Google. There is also going to be renewed cooperation when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic, joint calls for a full and transparent investigation into the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic, including a full probe into the theory of a lab leak in Wuhan, as well as talk about how to lift export restrictions for COVID-19 vaccines to assist the developing world. We know that there is the potential for some difficult conversations there, given Joe Biden's support for a temporary waiver for intellectual property rights on COVID-19 vaccines, an idea that has been met with some resistance here in Europe. But certainly there will be talk about how in the short to medium term to make vaccines available for the developing world.
Jimmy, thanks for that. Lucy Hoff speaking to us from Brussels.